Ooh, that looks tasty. Folks, today the Hungry Gamer is back with another crowdfunding preview, and today we're talking about Wastelandia, designed by Drew Williams with art by Ree Bermudez from Back to Basics Games. And I do apologize if I mispronounced any of those names. Now before I get started, please make sure you turn on your Klingon subtitles, because if I make any mistakes in the rules overview, that is where you will find the corrections. Additionally, I do need to point out that everything that you see here is currently in the prototype phase. Now with that said, what this game is this is a apocalyptic future in which everything has been destroyed, and basically kind of the kids of the neighborhood are fighting back in their own ways against the apocalypse stuff. And this is a boss battler game that takes place over 4 rounds. You can see this is the very first one that you're ever going to do, where you have 2 clank bots that you're fighting. You got clank bot 1 and clank bot 2. And you're going to try to take them out with dice rolling. And to play the game, you need to have a minimum of 2 heroes, but just to show you how it works, I have only 1 set up right here, and that will still give you a rough idea of how the game's going to work. Now, what's going to happen is, at the beginning of the game, you're going to wind up picking who's going first, who's going second, and after each fight, there'll be a way to determine who's going to go first or second each round. And you're going to try to be battling through these 4 different fights, and after each fight you'll gain various rewards, which will be new abilities that you can use and other rewards that will kind of boost your characters as you go. Now, if you are not interested in how this game is played, we'll jump into my final thoughts, and then we'll go to the timestamp on the screen right now. For those of us still here, let's talk about how this game is played. So the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to draw out of the bag here an ability chip, so in this case B. And what that's going to do is it's going to tell me which of the bot abilities is going to activate. And for both of these bots, what they're going to do is they're going to clumsily chase whoever's turn it is, and that's going to provide them with 2 fear. Now I will tell you now what fear is going to do is when you have it, it means every time you get hit, you take 1 extra damage for every fear that you have. And I'll talk about that in just a bit. But that's not going to happen until the end of the round. So if I'm able to defeat 1 or both of these bots before I've used all my dice, then I can prevent some of that. And you'll notice there's 3 different abilities, and there are multiple chits of each type here in the bag. It is also possible in later fights to have multiple types of bad guys, and each one of them might be using a different ability each round. Additionally, it's important to note up here, it's telling you that if you defeat both bots in 6 turns or less, you're going to get to go to the loot phase. There's no extra setup, and the optional challenge is, if I can do it in 4 turns or less, I will get the super reward in the reward phase, and that'll make sense when we get there. Over here we have power cubes. You can always spin a power cube to reroll 1 or all of your dice, and that's pretty much how it works. So I'm going to slide this up a little bit, because you don't need to see that anymore, and then slide up my character board here. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and roll all of my dice. And so at this point, I could choose to use one of these cubes here to reroll 1 or more of these dice. And so let's just kind of look through at what I have. My main damaging attack here is this boxing glove. And this is going to do more damage the more fear that I have. So maybe that's not what I want to start with. Or I have the flamingo floaty over here, which would allow me to take a die and basically change the number by 1 and just let it kind of sit over here, and then another player would be able to use it. Whereas this one right here, the battle bike, is going to allow me to do fear to multiple baddies. So let's just kind of look at how this works. So we'll just say I'm going to not do a reroll, and I'm going to start with this battle bike, which is 2 equal dice, and then any other 1 die. So I'll just put this 3 on there. And that's going to allow me to roll all 3 dice, and each die that is a 5 or higher is going to do 2 fear to do baddies, and each 4 or lower is going to deal 1 fear to all players. So let's just move these out of the way for the moment. Oops, I changed that number by accident, and I'll go ahead and roll those. In this case, I got 5, 5, 6. So in that case, I would wind up doing 6 fear to each of these baddies, which is a very good result. But let's just say I'd rolled a 1. Maybe then I decide, you know what, I'm going to use one of my power tokens here and re-roll that, and then I got my 5. So that's great. These would stay here. I've used that ability. Now I have these dice left over, and there are various choices that I have of what I can do. I can throw a stick at them. I could use my sneakers, which would heal me, and then could allow me to reuse the die. So let's just say that I actually had an even die, which is what I need, and I use it over there. Then I would get to increase my health by 3. You can go above your starting value. And then I get to reroll that die. And it says if I roll a higher value than I had started with, then I could reuse it. Now with the 6, I couldn't do that, but let's say I put a 2 there, now I would get this die back and I could use it again. Then perhaps I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to use a 5 down here to get myself a power back. And then my last die, sorry about it, it's kind of sliding all over the place here. I'm going to use that over here on my stick, which will allow me to roll that. And I got a 3, and I look down here. If a 3 or higher is rolled, then I deal 1 damage. So we'll say I'm going to do 1 damage to Clankbot 1. But if you remember, it has 6 fear on it. So that's going to bring it all the way down to 4. Then I would take my damage, which would be a total of 4 fear, 2 fear from each of the bad guys. Then it would go to another player's turn, but before the turn starts, we would draw one of these out here. In this case, that would move the active ability to C, and then they would do what they're going to do. Of course, they might be using some of the abilities that I've set up, like the flamingo or whatever it may be. And there are a bunch of different characters, but that's mostly how it's going to work. So let's just pretend that we did very well and we succeeded. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to page 27 to 28, which is right here, and this is the rewards phase. And so what we're going to do is out of the deck, we're randomly going to place 2 weapons and 2 items, and we will place the turn orders out, and then the rewards on the top. And so what you can see here is we have these rewards. And first off, that's something that you're going to get at the start of the next fight. So if this one, I can choose 1. I could either gain 2 power cubes, I could heal by 4, or remove 2 fear, because your fear carries over, as does your health. Or if I'd gain that super reward, which in that first fight meant I had to win in 4 rounds or less, then I can choose one of them, which is slightly stronger. Or, for example, this one over here, I could gain 3 power cubes, but also gain 2 fear. But if I got the super reward, I'd gain 3 power cubes and also gain 2 health. Now, along with that, whatever reward you take is also going to determine what your turn order is and which item or weapon you're going to get. And they all do different things. Sometimes you have to roll odds or evens, sometimes you have to re-roll, sometimes you have to have matching dice, etc., etc., etc. They are all very, very different. However, once you are done, you're going to move on to the next battle down here. And to do that, you're going to roll a die, and it's going to tell you what you're going to go on to. So in this case, I rolled a 4. I'd go on to the Cult Recruiter, pages 5 and 6. Now, I'm not going to turn to that because the designer asked me not to show off too many different things. But this is basically how this game works. And I will tell you before I move on to my final thoughts that each of the base characters, their base abilities, does make them all feel and play very, very different. So, with that said, what do I like about this game? First off, it's a fast game. For a boss battler type game, it really does cook. I can't think of any boss battler that I have or have covered that is faster than this game. It really does cook along. It keeps moving. I also think the core mechanics of the game, the dice placement. Now, to be fair, I really like dice placement, but I think the dice placement in this game is pretty darn good because there's so many different types of combinations that you need. Maybe you need the same type. Maybe you need the exact same value and something else. Maybe you need the exact same value on 2 dice, but if you have a third die of the same value, there's a bonus. Maybe it's just odd. Maybe it's a 4+ or whatever. And then the fact that every character starts the game with some kind of dice manipulation ability that either manipulates it for them or lets someone else use it, I think really, really works. And because of that, it also, not always, but sometimes really makes player interaction in a positive way work really, really well. So I do like all of that. I also like that there is fairly simple and easy dice mitigation. Those power cubes are relatively easy to get, and you start with a lot, and so you are almost encouraged to burn these things to just kind of get your re-rolls and re-roll dice, and it can be very, very satisfying the way that works. I also think that the variety of characters is fantastic. They all play very, very differently. There's different complexities. They do different things. Now, we're not talking about Spirit Island level diversity in the characters, but it is along that path, where some characters are very good at giving fear, some are good at doing damage to one character, some of them have to have a lot of fear, then they can do a lot of damage. And I think that is very interesting and fun. I also think it works really well as a co-op game. I think even though the turns are relatively insular, as I mentioned, because you can work together with the trading dice or even just discussing, I'm going to throw a lot of fear on this bad guy so you can hit them harder. I think just those very simple mechanics really reward cooperative play, which I think is a huge bonus to this game. I also really like the reward system. And with that, I mean the fact that you're choosing how early you want to go in the next round. You want to go first, second, third, fourth, the item you get, but also the rewards that you can get. And along with that, the way that you are able to get the super rewards. Do this challenge and get a better bonus, assuming you win. And I really like that. It really makes you think, can I do this? Is it worth trying to do this? And I really, really enjoy that. So, what are my quibbles with the game? The first thing is, this is a dice-driven game. It can feel very random. You're drawing out what the bad guys are going to do, and sometimes the dice just don't cooperate. And I've said this in pretty much all dice-driven games, and it seems silly I have to say this, but sometimes the dice just aren't your friend. And sometimes you just can't win because the dice are crap. And that doesn't bother me, but I always feel the need to point that out, that this is dice-driven. So that is luck, that is random, and sometimes luck is bad. The next thing I'll say is, there is some story, and you get a little story in each fight and so on, but this is not a story-driven game. This is a mechanics-driven game. This is a game where you're fighting these bosses, you're moving through, and it's not about the story. This is a game that's about the mechanics, and I'm here for it, but just understand that that is what it is. You're going to have some story, but not a ton of story driving you through this game. The last thing I'm going to say is, I think this game really, honestly, plays best at 2. Because at 1 player, you are getting a delightful experience, and you're playing 2 characters, and you're sharing dice and all. At 2 player, you're having the conversation with someone else. They're saying, well, I would like to do this. Well, how can I help you? But I understand you want to do this, so how can I help you? And I think that's where this game shines. And I would almost recommend play 2 player with each player playing 2 characters. 3 player is fine. I've played it several times that way. It is fun. But you do start to feel like, okay, I'm waiting a long time before I get to go again. And I haven't played 4 player, but honestly, I don't really want to play 4 player because I don't want to wait that long before I get to go again. So I think this game really is excellent at 2 player. I think it's fun at 3 player, and I can't speak to 4 player, but I'm not really interested in playing it at 4 player. So there you have it, folks. That is Wastelandia. As always, if I've made any mistakes in the rules overview, please let me know in the comments with the timestamp so I can get that in Klingon subtitles. If you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, share, maybe become a channel member. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.